Joining us now to discuss this is orthopedic surgeon and team physician for the U.S. ski and snowboarding team, Dr. Robert Parisien. Doctor, great to have you back in the studio. So how promising are these new restrictions being lifted, rather, given the fact that we've seen the CDC go back and forth on this so many times?
I mean, I think this is a great step in that next direction now of living with COVID in the society. And so this is the CDC's attempt to do that. And so I think great news for families who have children that are going back to school in the fall. As the CDC has noted, Dr. Walensky and Dr. Williams have stated that they are now going to lift the screening standard. So you don't need to test negative anymore to be part of, to go to class and to be part of those activities. They have also lifted certain mandates as well. So if you're unvaccinated or vaccinated and you have an exposure, then you no longer have to quarantine. They're just simply recommending that you wear a mask for 10 days, you take a rapid antigen 5 days after the exposure and test negative. Now, if you do get COVID, then they're also recommending that you maintain the 5-day of the isolation, but you test at days 6 and 8 with a rapid antigen test, so 48 hours apart. There's a new study out of UMass that suggested that the two tests is more sensitive to detecting the disease if you're taking the rapid antigen. And also, as you stated, the 6-foot distancing rule has now been lifted as well. And so really, I think this is the CDC's attempt to move forward into an environment where many Americans have been for a while, which is living with COVID and still maintaining an environment where we can provide protection against our immunocompromised and at-risk population.
Why do you think that they're doing this now? Are we seeing enough of a decrease in infection rates and hospitalizations?
Well, the population and immunity is significantly increased, as you suggested when you introduced the segment. So 70% of the population is fully vaxxed. 50%, so over 150 million people have at least one booster. Population immunity is increased because those that have the natural immunity from infection itself. Also, looking at the numbers, as we always say, we have about 100,000 new cases per day. Well, we were up in the winter to 400 to 800,000 new cases per day. We have about 400 deaths per day. We were up at our highest in the winter, about 3,000 deaths per day. And now we have about 6,000 infections, new hospitalizations, for example, per day. So we really need to follow those hospitalizations and death rates very closely. Also, we were over 50% of the population was in a community area that was high risk. Now over 50% is in a low risk infection community area. So all of these numbers are really trending in that direction, in the right direction.
I don't want to assume that every one of our viewers who is watching this program are ready to rip off their masks and they want all the restrictions taken away. And I experience this a lot when I fly because there are still quite a lot of people on airplanes wearing masks because they're still nervous about this. In fact, even getting into the Uber the other day, the driver texted me, please have your mask on. And, so what would you say to people watching at home that might be concerned that the easing of these restrictions could mean an uptick in infections? What would you say to them?
Well, I think we certainly need to keep track of the case volume to see if we do have an uptick in infections. And again, I want to emphasize that most importantly is the hospitalization and the death rates. But I think that we need to be respectful, for one, because we don't know what somebody else's risk status is. So somebody else may be immunocompromised. They may be battling through cancer or going through treatments, or they may have a loved one at home, a child, a relative that is going through that. And they are still at high risk in that community. So I think in that environment, if people are requesting some of those things, I think generally speaking, we should be respectful of that. But again, we need to realize, and I think we do now as a community, who our at-risk population is, and for everyone else who may not be around those in those areas and those environments, this is really the CDC's attempt to move towards an environment where we are living with an endemic level of virus within this country.
That's such an important point to make because you really don't know what each individual's health situation is. There are certainly people that are at a higher risk. Going back to, again, the developing news that we were speaking about right before we went to your segment, Dr. Parisien, which is universities across the country are now warning incoming students about the spread of monkeypox. Is this potentially a new breeding ground here?
So monkeypox, once again, is spread through skin-to-skin contact, and it can be spread through droplets in the air. And so certainly anytime you have close environments where any population, especially students at colleges and universities, you can have a spread of the monkeypox. Now, the vaccine is available, but it's only being really rolled out to high-risk populations right now. Those are being the men who have sex with men,
Predominantly the gay
populations.
community.
Predominantly gay community, but again, anyone can get this, can be
Right.
infected with monkeypox. It's like COVID. It
Yeah.
will and can infect anyone, but that right now is the high-risk community. We also have an antiviral called TPOXX. I guess if you're going to liken it to COVID, it's similar to Paxlovid, where you can take it after. But to remind about TPOXX is that it's still experimental in the sense that everything is going through clinical trials, and so that's coming out of the national stockpile right now. So we don't have as many available. But certainly, there's something to look out for when we go back into the school year and all those kids are converging.
All right, you heard it from the doctor. Dr. Parisian, great to have you back. We appreciate you being with us.
My pleasure.